I wrote Never Again, and I initially wrote it in the first person. It's to say, I've been down this road before. And I thought perhaps it would be stronger if we changed it to second person. And, you know, like, you went down this road before. And I brought that to Dan, and Dan said, well, what about third person? What if it's he? And that was perfect. That's exactly what that song needed. And when I sat down to write Sleep, because that had been so effective the last time, I tried using he's as well. And it kind of hit me in conversation that I had with Dan. You know, what if these two he's are the same he? And Dan and I had always, aside from music, done some writing and talked about writing short stories in the past and that sort of thing. And it seemed like such a perfect idea to write this story before we actually wrote the songs around it, and it was a way to make an album that would normally have way too many variables to have an interlocking theme, and that became the most fun part of it, was writing the story.
We did demos beforehand, so was that a positive thing to go in prepared and have an idea what we sounded like, what we wanted to sound like, or a negative thing in that we didn't, or were we creative in the studio?
Well, as much as I hate to admit Dan had a good idea, it was definitely a positive to demo first. Knowing a lot of the hurdles that we were going to run into that you only gain from doing it, and I mean not just the hurdles, but figuring out what you want to do with certain things that you just can't pull off live. Being able to do that for free before you go into a studio is huge. And I don't think the creativity suffered in that me doing the mixing down here versus going into Ron's is obviously there were so many more options because Ron knows what he's doing and I don't. And there was such an opportunity for growth that way. I mean, the little things like the radio blurb at the end of Never Again, or burying that extra don't dirt for happiness. And it was nice to have a third voice there too. When we were down here, it was just Dan and I making the decisions, and having a tiebreaker helped.
What was the writing process like, both story and music, pre-October, before you brought it to a band?
Well, musically, we not knowingly broke the album in half, but of the 12 songs, I brought 5 to you, you brought 5 to me. One was a For the Hard Way tune that we rewrote the lyrics for, and then there was Sleep, where I kind of brought it to you, but you changed the chorus so significantly. It certainly wasn't the same song I brought to you by the time it got done. And so that was a little strange. We joked about only having to each write half an album, but that's pretty much what we did. And we consciously divided it up. I remember really wanting to write what at the time was called the Mistake song. It turned into Have a Drink With Me, and Dan wanted to write the Fall song, which became The Fall. And from there it kind of split off. I'm just glad I didn't have to write Stage 2.
Obviously, being in the Mercenary Saints and For the Hard Way, never worked with females before, so how cool is it to work with some chick singers?
I think it's not so much about female singers as just being lucky enough to work with two voices like Megan's and Katie's, which are just phenomenal. When Megan came down to audition for the part, it was difficult to envision anybody else giving voice to those characters, because it was just the perfect voice. And Katie, like, that is just an unbelievably powerful voice that comes out of that girl, and I'm really, really glad that she did what she did for us on Stage 2. And I think back to a point in the recording where the solo that comes out of the end of Stage 2, it's actually two voices. Katie does the part, and then she does it again an octave higher, and she did the first one. I remember saying to Ron, like, she's going to do it again an octave higher. And him looking at me as though I didn't know what the word octave meant, because no one sings that high, and she just nailed it out of the park.
It's been quite a while since you've played a live show.
Yes, it has. True.
Any emotions?
Well, I think the one word that I have said when people have asked me about this project the whole way through has always been terrified. It is so new and it's so different, and I'm sure getting on stage, I'm going to be incredibly nervous until the first note. And then once we're off and running, and it will, I have to believe, kind of be like riding a bike, which I was never particularly good at. Yeah, I really do think that it'll come back, but right now I'm scared. I mean, 3 weeks away, we're not where we need to be yet, but we're not going to get there. Like, we're going to get there, but the idea of being up on a stage again, you know, for the first time in my 30s, will feel a little bit strange. But I do have a Sex Dwarf t-shirt again, so at least I'm ready. I'm gonna do this.
Because all I can hear is hip hop.
Yeah.
Professional.